Yo, what is up, world? Meta Beeps here. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. It is really good to see you guys. This week's vlog, I'm going to be showing you guys 3 different lighting setups using nothing but natural sunlight to give you up to 3 different looks. So before we get into it, go and roll the intro, and I'll see you soon. Alright, so let's start off with a question. Why does it matter that we can get 3 different looks throughout the day using nothing but natural sunlight? Well, depending on the location and the time of day that you are trying to film your scene, your shoot, or your project, whatever it may be, you can get different looks just by using natural sunlight. Now, this is something that you're really going to want to spend a lot of time thinking about and planning because you don't have any light. So what better light to use than the sunlight itself? So there are different looks that you can get throughout the day if you time it right and if you're in the right place, in the right location. If you point the camera in the right direction and you have your talent in the right place, again, you can get several different looks. And I'm actually going to be using a diffusion material, so I'm kind of cheating, but at the end of the day, it's still all about where the direction of the sun is and how that actually shapes your scene. So let's take a look at 3 different times of the day on a wide shot. So as you can see here at 8:30 a.m., I am backlit. The sun is to the right of the screen. How you can tell that is if you just look for the shadows. Where are the shadows leaning towards? Shadows are leaning towards the left, which means the light, natural sunlight, the sunlight is to the right. And then next up we have direct sunlight overhead, which the shadows are directly underneath whatever the subject is that the sun is lighting. And last but not least, we have our sunset. As you can tell, the sun is directly across from where it first started in the morning. As you know, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. So knowing that, depending on where you place your talent, time of the day, you can get 3 different looks, as we just saw here. Now the shadows are leaning towards the right, which must mean that the sun is all the way to the left, or you could just say to the west. All right, let's take the same concept at 9:30 a.m. and move in a little bit closer. And like I said, I'm going to be using a diffusion material above my head to help soften that light. But as you can tell, if you look at the shadows again, the shadows are leaning towards camera, which means the sun is directly behind me. Now, this is a soft, even lighting because of the diffusion material above my head. But if you look at my shoulders, you can see an outline of where the sun is actually making contact with me, the subject. Now, there's a nice outline of my body against a kind of a darker background, which if you're trying to create layers and depth within your frame, it's good to have a nice highlight around your subject against a darker background like the house you see behind me. Now, that just helps add separation to me and the house, which again, if we're trying to create layers and we're trying to create depth within our frames, it's nice to have as many layers as you possibly can, which if this shot was actually front lit and the sun was in front of me, everything behind me would be even lit and it would be a little bit harder to kind of see myself or the subject amongst your background. Now let's take a look at the reverse shot and see what it would look like if we simply just turn the camera the opposite direction and see how the sun looks when it is front lighting your subject. Now you can see that I am still softly lit because of that diffusion material above my head, but you can tell my shoulders no longer have that highlight kind of separating me from the background, which if you look at the branches from the tree behind me, it's actually brighter than my face, which it doesn't look bad, but it just makes it a little bit harder to guide where you want your viewers' eyes to be. Now again, this is not a bad shot by any shape or form, but if you're trying to create more depth, more layers within your frame, it's going to be a lot harder to do that when you are front lighting your subject, again because of everything in the background is going to be probably brighter than your subject. If you're trying to create more depth, more layers within your frame, it's going to be a lot harder to do that when you are front lighting your subject, again because of everything in the background is going to be probably brighter than your subject. Now, a way that you can add more light to this scene is if you just simply bounce or add in an artificial light. I didn't do that because it was just me filming, but again, this is what it looks like at 9:30 a.m. when you front light your subject. Everything in the background is going to be at the same exact lighting values as my face, or they're going to be much brighter like you can see the trees and the leaves behind me. So if you don't want to front light or backlight your subjects during the day, all you have to do is simply turn your subject and the camera so that the sun is either on the right or the left side of your talent's face. Again, I'm going through some diffusion here so you can see that I'm side lighting myself or the talent, and there is more sun, more light value on the right side of my face or camera left of my face, and on the opposite side it's a little bit darker. Now this is creating contrast on your subject. If we look at the background, we have some shadows from the leaves, from the trees, and it actually makes me stand out slightly more from the background because, again, like we said, I am brighter than the background, which adds a little bit more layers. You don't get the kind of nice halo effect or that backlight effect on my shoulders, but you do get higher lighting values on my face opposed to the shadows in the background, which again, if we're trying to go for that creating layers and depth within every single shot, this is a way that you can do that using the shadows and using the side light method. Alright, so here is 2 p.m. in the afternoon. This is our wide shot with the sun directly overhead. Again, notice where the shadows are falling. Let's see what it looks like when we bump in a little bit tighter and still use that diffusion overhead to see where the shadows are falling and if it looks any different than front lighting or backlighting your subject. Alright, 2 o'clock, we are natural lighting, again, diffusion overhead. Now this is a really tough time to be filming throughout the day. This is a time where it's hard to get shape with your shadows and with your talent, and again, this is not a bad shot, I don't think, by any shape or form, but depending on your project, depending on the look you're trying to achieve, it may be hard to get a little shape, a little shadow, and a little depth as well. Luckily, the house behind me has a huge shadow because, again, the sun is directly above, but if you look at my face, I'm very even lit, and it actually looks pretty nice. But if you wanted to add a little bit more shape, you might want to try filming earlier or later in the day to get that front light or backlight. And if we flip around to the reverse shot of that, again, the shadows don't really move very much at all, and it just comes down to what's in the background. If we take a look at that tree that earlier when we were shooting the same direction in the morning at 9:30 a.m., those trees were being blasted with sunlight, which was making it a little bit harder to see my face because I'm competing with those background levels. But here at 2 p.m. in the day, it's a little bit easier to see my face because that tree is in shadow, and again, we're trying to create layers and depth. We're going with this whole theme, and it's actually kind of working here, but we don't get that hard outline again on my shoulders, but we still get the separation of light values from my face to the trees and everything in the background that's in shadow. So again, depending on your location, you may be able to get away with filming at this time of the day when the sun is directly overhead. It's not an easy time to be filming because it's hard to get shape within your shots. But if you compose your shots properly and you put the right things in the background that will have shadows like what you see behind me, it will make it a little bit easier to get shape and depth. And last but not least, let's take a look at sunset hour. It looks pretty similar to how it did at 9:30 a.m. in the morning, right? But the sun is just literally on the opposite side, on the west side, opposed to rising from the east. Now you can tell that the long shadows are now leaning to the right, which, as we know now, the sun should be on the left-hand side. So let's bump in for a close-up and see just how the light looks with the overhead diffusion above. Now looking at this shot, it looks very similar to how it did at 9:30 a.m. And it should, because now the sun is literally just on the opposite side of where it started at 9:30 a.m. Now this is a really clever way to shoot dialogue scenes where you have two people talking. You can start off in the morning having a backlit person one direction, and then wait several hours later, point the camera in the opposite direction, and have a backlit character as well. Now, believe it or not, this happens all the time in a lot of movies or shows, but you probably just don't notice it. And the reason for this is because we just want to add, again, more layers and depth and dimension to the frame. Now, if this is something that you are going for as a filmmaker, as the cinematographer or director, this is a technique, this is a style of shooting that you can do. You literally just have to plan out the entire day accordingly. So you pretty much get the same exact look in the morning that you do in the evening. And again, if we properly plan for this, we can get two very similar looking shots when we cut back and forth, so that one, it looks really nice, we get the layers, we get the depth, we get that nice kind of hard light on my shoulders and create depth. So I hope that you learned something from this video. Now you can go out in one day and get 3 entirely different looks, or 2 very similar looks, depending on what time you film and how you compose your shots. So if you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. Go ahead and do a super jump on the like button down below, and also get subscribed to the YouTube channel because every single Wednesday is a brand new vlog. I'm Matty Beeves, the cinematographer / student, and I'll see you all in 7 days. Fight on.